in the Pits podcast with your host, Wyatt Williams, myself, and of course, Connor Klon Huberty. How is your day going today so far, sir?
It's been good. It's been a good week. It's always nice to be a winner after a nice Sunday. So like
Oh,
taking that,
yeah,
that all the way through for 7 days.
tough. There's a reason why you have your hat on and I don't.
Yep, 100%.
You know, I don't know. We looked terrible in the first half, got back into it there at the end, and I really thought there for a second, I was like, oh man, here we go. We're gonna do this. We're gonna pull this off. And door just got slammed. I mean, it got slammed hard. So
Yeah,
it's tough.
it's the classic Kevin O'Connell make you feel like you're losing your mind in the second half with a 3-score lead. That's nothing new for us. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't always end the prettiest of ways either. So we'll take it. But yeah,
Slinging, slinging Sammy D for MVP.
I'm not saying it, but I'm glad he's our quarterback right now. I'll stay with
He,
that.
you
But
know, he's on track. He is
I
on
know
track for it.
things look good. There's gonna football. I mean, the season's so long now. Anyway, they've added 17 games, but like we got a long way to go. I'm just waiting. There's gonna be some down weeks in the middle here. It's
For
coming. Yeah, it
sure.
happens for
But it's
everybody.
got to be
But
nice to be 4-0. Have you in your lifetime have you ever been 4-0 before?
yeah, I think. Well, technically, yes. The last team I think that did it was the '98 team that went 15 and
Okay.
one. So, I
Oh yeah,
mean,
okay. That makes
yeah,
sense.
if you would have told me it would be 4-0, I wouldn't have believed you. And it's obviously nice, but expectations we're looking long term. JJ McCarthy is not even playing right now and won't be playing this year. So
Well, JJ
I'm
McCarthy is going to
interested in
be
the
a
future.
great JJ McCarthy's going to be a great first round backup quarterback to Sling and Sammy D, and it's going to be
I don't
awesome.
know. I think that's what I'm worried about is if this does continue to trend the way it is. Like, do we get stuck in quarterback limbo? But we'll see.
I
We'll
think you
see.
will, but this is not a football podcast. This is a
That's right.
NASCAR podcast. We do have NASCAR content for you guys. We're just Vikings and Packers fans that have to throw shade back and forth whenever our teams play, and it's okay. You guys got the first one. We'll win the second one.
That's right.
Is what it is. You guys got
That's
us at
right.
Lambeau. But last week, we were talking about the weekend. Last weekend, we raced at Kansas. We're going to break that down. William Byron, Ryan Blaney, both having really good days. Kyle Busch and Chase Briscoe had a little bit of an incident there at the end. Denny Hamlin made some comments that had a lot of people alarmed. I've got a hot take on that one. Even though Denny says on his podcast that it was nothing, I don't know. I think there might be something coming of that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. FedEx is leaving NASCAR. Tyler Reddick is in the bottom four. Ty Dillon is taking Daniel Hemrick's spot there at Colleague. We're going to talk about the upcoming changes to the car for Talladega. Of course, preview the Talladega race, make our picks for the winner, and I think that's everything, right? That's our preview here. That looks like everything to me. So
Feels like a pretty good week.
let's just jump into it here. Kansas this last weekend. Pretty solid race, honestly, especially but it's a solid race, I think, partially because we had such a stinker the week before. So really anything that was halfway decent was going to be considered good. So we'll start with that. Not to be negative, but Ross Chastain, of course, gets the win. Love seeing the watermelon smash. I mean, just
Absolutely. You got to love the unique celebrations when certain drivers have them. I mean, we've had
I,
Carl Edwards, other guys
yeah.
too, but yeah, it's awesome.
I personally think that that's my favorite right now.
Yeah, I think so too.
Carl Edwards was my favorite for a while when I was a kid. I grew up a Matt Kenseth fan, but Carl was always my second favorite driver because I loved the backflips. That was so cool.
Backflip was
And
sweet.
now that we don't have the backflip anymore, Ross has to be the coolest celebration.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you think of unique ones. I don't know if there's any. Joey celebrates with the steering wheel out the window. There's not really many super unique ones anymore. That unless I'm completely missing
I
a
know
few.
Daniel
I can't think
Suarez
of
does
any.
the pinata. I think
Yep, Suarez. There
that's
you
really
go.
the only one. It's got to be. It's just a track house thing. They just love tearing stuff up, and they love disruption, which is what they said this about this weekend. Love being disrupting. But a big win for Trackhouse. This one team has really come along at just right behind where they needed to come along.
Yep.
Can you imagine if they would have either sneaked into the playoffs or found a way to win midseason? We would be talking about Ross Chastain in the round of 8 right now.
We would be, and it
I
wouldn't be
mean,
that shocking, I don't think either.
no.
I think it's one of those things. Trackhouse as a whole, maybe it's with Suarez's success too. We just kind of paint them all in the same picture, but it feels like that one car. To your point too, like they did this last year. They get faster in the playoffs at the end, and they won the finale last year. So the year it connects and the dots are all aligned, it's not going to surprise me at all. It shouldn't. I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. I think that they really do just come alive here at the later part of the year, especially Ross. Daniel, he's just been having some pretty decent, consistent finishes and stuff. But that one team every year about this time, man, they just ignite, and that's why
Hmm.
if they can get into the playoffs, they're so dangerous because this is really the time where they come alive. But them not being in the playoffs now, it's like this is 2 years in a row now where Ross had either been eliminated or wasn't in the playoffs altogether and got to win deeper into the playoffs. So it's like, man, missed opportunities by that one team.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's just kind of the name of the game. You put him and like Bubba Wallace in the same kind of
Yep.
class right now of fringe playoff drivers every year, and then get beat out by a guy that unexpectedly wins a race like Harrison Burton, and you're stuck in the same situation. But again, would not surprise me in 2025 if Ross has 2-3 wins heading into the playoffs in the round of 8 kind of thing. It feels like Trackhouse is right on that razor's edge of just crossing over.
Absolutely. And especially once they bring in SVG too, this is going to be a dangerous team moving forward.
Yep,
I mean, if
absolutely.
SV is if SVG can find a way to be more consistent on the ovals, and I'm not saying he's got to go out and win 2 oval track races or anything like that, but if he can find a way to get himself in a position where he can get a couple of top 10 finishes, SVG, there is a path in this playoff format for him to be a possibly even Final Four driver, which is crazy to say, but with the road courses later in the playoffs, I mean, it's right there. You'd be crazy to say this guy isn't going to win at least 1 or 2 of the road course races next year.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you 100% too. And he's going to be the favorite. I would think after, what would this be now? After 3 full years going into a 4th year, the next gen, that gap on road courses is going to close a little bit for him, as in the rest of the field's going to catch him. But it's still like he's got to be the favorite. And like you said, there's plenty of road courses on the schedule now. And you find a couple in the playoffs, even you can really shake things up. So
Yeah.
it would be interesting.
And we're even adding more road courses for next year. But yes, Ross Chastain, great day, but also talking about a couple other guys who had some great days. William Byron came alive. I mean, we've been talking about on this podcast for the first 2 episodes, at some point, that 2014, they're bound to take off. At some point, this plane has to lift off the ground and the wheels have to go. And it finally did this weekend. They looked great. I mean, they looked
Yeah.
like a team that's going to be a threat moving forward. And barring some terrible luck and some really crazy things happening, they've essentially sealed themselves now into the round of 8. So, all in all, a great day for them, as well as Ryan Blaney. So, Ryan Blaney takes the 2nd spot there in the playoffs, and the 24 and 12 team have really just kind of distanced themselves in the front of that pack.
Yeah. I like you said, to that point, the 24 car was coming. It was almost inevitable. And we also mentioned how Penske as a whole, and specifically Blaney, they're just so good at the playoffs and managing the system and maximizing their points. So both good days for them. Blaney just could drive through the field, it felt like, and the 24 was just near the front of the field all day. So it was nice for both of them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they handle Talladega with, 25-point plus cushions for both of them. But I mean, you got to keep being aggressive here too. It's not one of those where you can just kind of quote unquote take a bye week here and sit back on it. So put themselves in a good spot, but got a long way to go too. Where in 2 tracks where stuff could really fall apart quick.
A lot of parity in these next 2 tracks. I mean, first off,
Hmm.
you've got Talladega, which any super speedway, there's going to be mass amounts of chaos and parity. I mean, we already know that. I mean, when you've got a parking lot moving all together at once at 190 plus miles an hour, something's bound to happen at some point.
Right.
And then after that, we've got Charlotte Roval, and we've seen some crazy things happen there too. So a lot of parity moving forward for these drivers. But also speaking about Kansas this weekend, there was a little bit of a conundrum. We'll use that word with
Big bummer.
Kyle Busch and Chase Briscoe. And I wanted to know your thoughts on the whole situation. Kyle, of course, leading the race. Chase Briscoe trying to keep himself on that lead lap to keep themselves in the fight, as they're a playoff driver as well. So kind of did you take any issue with the move from Chase Briscoe? Did you think it was perfectly fine? Because he did leave him a little space, but I wanted to know what were your thoughts.
I just watching back on it. I've never been behind the wheel of a race car, so I'll take it with a grain of salt, I guess. But I was really bummed. First of all, if you're going to have any non-playoff driver win this race, Kyle Busch is definitely the guy we want. I feel like as a
Heartbreak.
fan base, but I don't have a problem with what Briscoe did. I'm almost more so. I'd have to go back and watch it again. I'm almost more so kind of confused on Kyle Busch's part, just what the sense of urgency was there. I know you want to put Briscoe a lap down and keep moving, as you know, protecting the lead is all too important there. But just felt like it was just forced, like you said. I mean, Briscoe did leave him a lane, even if he didn't. Like, you're racing to stay on the lead lap. It's not like you can't race the leader there. It's all fair game, in my opinion. But I just don't quite understand why we had to force the issue. If you're Kyle Busch, I feel like you take a lap or take a corner there to live and see another lap, as the old saying goes, and work from there. But it yeah, just felt unnecessary in my point of view, in terms of Kyle Busch's, I guess, how he handled it.
Well, he had a big, mean orange machine in his
I
rearview mirror
know,
that was getting
I know he did.
bigger, and I think him coming off of turn 2 there, he had a full head of steam. And, when I watched it the first time live, I thought to myself, did Chase Briscoe really just dump Kyle Busch and just
I
shove him right
I thought he
into the
doored him.
wall? I
Absolutely, yeah.
totally thought he did. I was like, whoa, okay, we can't be doing all that. So I immediately was kind of like, what was that all about? And then they play the replay, and granted, there wasn't a lot of space. He left him a lane. That's it, though.
Literally a
Just
car. Like, it was
one
a
car.
car. Yeah,
That
you'd
is
had
it.
to thread the needle perfectly. Like, it
Yes.
was tight. In defense too, like, could Chase maybe have given him a half a lane more? Yeah, I mean, that would have been nice. But the only thing my brain immediately goes to, like, so Kyle Busch gets past there. Ross is in the lead. Briscoe's not going to let Ross by easily either. Like, I know, I understand the racing and everything. Like, you don't want to ever give it up, but it just really frustrated me that you had time. You could live and fight back, at least with whatever the result was there.
Yeah, it was almost like he was trying to run. And granted, yes, you're racing, so he is trying to run away from Ross, but it was almost like
Mm-hmm.
he was too much trying to run away from Ross. And in that
Yeah,
situation, when he came up to the back of Briscoe and Briscoe left him just a little bit there to get the car through, it to me, it almost, and again, like you mentioned earlier, not a race car driver, never driven one in my life. So again, take us with a grain of salt. But it almost looked to me like he needed to just back off a little bit, let off the gas,
yeah,
and coast for a second, get behind Briscoe, and try and make a pass in 3 and 4, or when they came back around to 1 and 2 again. It just seemed like he was really trying to force the issue there, and then they hit the weird draft off of the side of the 14 car. The back starts to spin out, and then it's just you're along for the
yeah.
ride at that point. It's too late, too far gone.
And to, Kyle, I think, kind of mentioned it after the race too, that with this car, it's different than it used to be with this generation of race car. But again, like, not I can't speak to driving it, but and I'm sure it's hard at that point in the corner too, letting off the gas. They talk about a lot. If you just immediately dump the throttle, it's going to push the front into the fence. So maybe that's what Kyle was afraid of too, and didn't want to risk that either. But yeah, just really unfortunate that something like that is what caused it. Chase didn't necessarily make contact with him and didn't really necessarily do anything wrong, in the written law of racing. But I don't know, just a bummer all the way around for Kyle. I
Yeah,
hate that for him.
it does. It does stink. Just because I just want to see Kyle win one this year, because he didn't make the
Hmm.
playoffs. We're already having to do the playoffs without Kyle Busch. But like at this point, just get the win. Just get the win. Keep the
Yeah.
streak going. live to fight another day next year. And if they got that win, I feel like there is a confidence missing with Kyle right now. And
100%. Oh,
and
100%.
if they got that win, I feel like it would do leaps and bounds to his confidence and help him in the long run with that, especially heading toward next season, since this one's at this point a lost cause in the sense of a championship, but he can still go out and win a race. So hopefully that wasn't it. If it was, man, I mean, how many close calls has that 8 car had this year to winning a race
Oh,
and fell just short every time? I mean,
oh my gosh. Yeah, there's a
disappointing.
world where he has 3-4 wins right now, and we're talking about him in the round of 8. And I mean, yeah, they had a string of bad luck there this summer too. I'm not going to forget about that, but just so close so many times this year. And I never thought I'd say that about Kyle Busch, but it is a bummer. Like, I feel for the guy, man. I want him to be old Kyle Busch still, but
Right. And I think he's at a point now where he's just like, the mentality is so, I have to win, I have to win, I have to win. I was thinking to myself, like, would it have been a different situation if Kyle was in the playoffs and he can't wreck out and that win means him advancing? Would he have approached the situation differently? Anything like that? But that, it's easy to sit here
yeah,
today and Monday morning quarterback it when, it was a rough situation. It just sucks. I
yeah.
hate the year that 8 team has had. And I just hope next year we can get back to normal. And I really hope that at some point this year in these next couple of races, they're able to find something. Just
I know.
something. Because man, what a rough year it's been for that 8 car. But anyways, one of his former teammates, we'll talk about him for a minute here. Denny Hamlin made some comments after the race at Kansas talking about not being mentally in it. Wires, his wires were crossed, all the stuff that he said. Um, and I'll get into mine here in a minute, but I wanted to toss it to you first. Kind of what was your reaction to the Denny Hamlin comments? What did you think originally? And kind of where are you at now with it?
I I think I started right away kind of just brushing it off myself, like, those post-race comments, you just got out of the car, like, it didn't go your way all day. Well, I mean, he was doing well. Pit crew apparently wasn't, but just not his day, and kind of a bummer with a car that could have won the race. So take a, kind of discount what he was saying. But at the same time, too, just as a competitor, I can't imagine just ever really admitting that your head's not in it. And I know context is important, and everybody can mean something a little bit differently when they say that. But I do think along, we just talked about confidence with Kyle Busch. You almost wonder if there's not the gremlins creeping into Denny's mind right now of, here we go again, another, round of 12 or another round of 8 that doesn't go our way. Like, I know he's a competitor. I know they had a fast car. I'm sure he'll be fine this weekend, but just that sense of doubt, is there just a little bit of it creeping in? And I think that's where my brain's headed with it after reading it and seeing it again.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Listening to it originally, kind of in a similar situation with you, I just felt like he's pissed off. He just got out of the car. They had
Right.
a tougher run.
Typical race
Um,
car driver stuff, like
exactly,
whatever.
exactly. And then I listened to the podcast today, the Actions Detrimental podcast, and he was talking about how it was taken out of context, and what he meant was he was just that day he didn't feel like he was all there or whatever. I Here's my hot take.
See, but you still wouldn't say that. Like, yeah,
Exactly. I think because for the last several years, there's been a situation like this at JGR with Martin Truex. I think that this starts Denny Hamlin's Martin Truex for the next several years. He's going to make a comment or something like this to where people will take it. I don't want to say the wrong way because it definitely sounded bad the way it came out. And it definitely sounded like he was
definitely
mentally
not a good
not in it.
headline.
No,
Yeah,
not at all. But I think this will replace the Martin Truex Jr. situation at JGR. I think that now the debate is going to be, oh, is Denny Hamlin in it? Does he even want to do this anymore? Is he still dialed in? I think that this sparks so many outside conversations now. I think if Denny could go back, he would take that back and think, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said
Absolutely.
that.
I think it's one of those things too where, and Denny knows this as well as anybody because he's somebody that actually talks about it all the time. But a race team is a team. Denny, in a sense, is like the quarterback of the team, but you just have to understand that your words and actions and things that go into the media and things that go to social media, even like that is all very important. And, Denny can mean one thing by it and show up, same Denny Hamlin next weekend. But how does this tire changer who had a tough day feel about what he said? How does this crew chief feel about what he said? You are the face of a team in a sense, and you just can't give off that energy. And it is a bummer because, like I said, I don't think Danny meant anything bad by it, but it's inevitable. Like you can't help but kind of think that sometimes and react to what he said like that.
Yeah, no, and speaking of not being all there anymore, FedEx will not be all there anymore starting next year with Denny Hamlin. And it's a really interesting and weird situation. I feel like my entire life watching NASCAR, I started watching in like '04, '05. There's always been a FedEx car.
There has, if
Like
that's when you
I
started,
just
there
don't.
has.
Yeah. So I don't know NASCAR without a FedEx car, and now here we are, and they're pulling out, and they were kind of unclear with it. They were at first it seemed like they were completely out.
Yeah,
Then there was some cloudiness, like okay, maybe we might run a race or two or something. So we'll have to see as time moves forward with this situation, kind of how many races they sign up for next year and stuff like that. But just kind of weird to not see that car. I mean, that's one of the most iconic NASCAR paint schemes ever, in my opinion. It's not the most iconic, but it's up there. It's one of them.
certainly in this era of the sport. I mean, since the early 2000s, the sponsor, and I mean the schemes changed a few times, but yeah, the sponsor itself, like FedEx, has been a staple, really. I mean, you think of like your top 5, 10 sponsors in the last 20, 25 years. They're certainly on that list. But yeah, just crazy. I think one thing we all have to remind ourselves as race fans sometimes, especially younger fans like us that haven't seen the different eras and different chapters of the sport pass through, is like this is part of it. I mean, there's sponsors that were popular in the 80s and 90s that aren't here anymore either, and some come back, some don't. But
Marlboro.
right. Well, I mean, yeah, there's certain ones that never will.
Wouldn't it be
But
cool to see a Marlboro car out there? I get it. We're
yeah,
trying not to promote smoking. I'm totally with it. Like
I
I'm
know,
right.
I
I'm
get you.
right there with you. I'm right there with you. But like, man, wouldn't a Marlboro car be cool out there again?
It,
You know what I
it
mean?
would
Like if Kyle
definitely give you
Busch
the
drove a Marlboro
nostalgia.
car.
Oh, dude, the guy's driven every other nicotine and alcohol sponsor possible this year. You might as well just throw cigarettes on there while you're at it. Just
Yeah.
complete the bingo card at this point. But yeah, I don't know. I think the whole thing with FedEx, like, yeah, it'd be a bummer to see him go. I saw a headline before we recorded that they're trying to reduce advertising as a whole. So it's not just NASCAR. If you think about it, then they're doing that in other places as well. So I don't look at it as a ding on NASCAR or anything either. It's just, I look at it like a marketing campaign. Like, you don't see the same commercial on TV for the same brand 5 years in a row. I mean, they do bring some back here and there, but you run a campaign in a sport or any other sort of advertising and it runs out and you're done with it for a while. I don't know. I think it's just kind of part of the process, unfortunately.
Totally off topic here, but you sparked a conversation in my mind. A commercial that should come back and stay forever, never go away, is the Chef Boyardee commercial where the can rolls to the house.
Uh,
That should never go away. That's a
I
great
love that.
commercial.
I love that just hit left field big time, but
It's
I
exactly.
absolutely agree with you. Yeah, it's a great commercial.
But anyway, sorry, not to go
Could
too
go
far
for
off
some of
track.
those right now. Actually, that ravioli stuff was awesome back in the day.
Oh
But
man, dude, I still find myself probably once every couple of months when we go to the grocery store,
that's
I'll
awesome.
pass by and think, man, some beefaroni would
If I
hit
turn
right
around
now.
and see this thing following me, it's coming home with me for sure.
Oh, and I knock it off the shelf and roll it toward me. I'll tell you what, it
Oh
comes
boy.
with us. That's for sure. Sorry, not to go too far off topic here.
Love
Um,
that.
but talk about falling off the shelf and being at the bottom. Tyler Reddick now in the bottom four of the playoffs right now for the round of 12, currently in the red. Not where we thought we'd see this 45 team at all, at least in my opinion. I didn't see this happening at all, especially at Kansas. I mean, Kansas has been a track where they've been really successful. And I was just kind of blown away with the weird day that they had. I mean, the 5 had a weird day too. So
Yeah.
the 5 in a weird spot with points as well. He's still on in the green. But yeah, I mean, what's kind of your reaction to Tyler Reddick being in the bottom 4 to start out here?
Well, I'm bummed number one for him because I really do think Tyler's a pretty cool guy. I think he's a good driver. It'd be fun to see him in the championship 4. I'm bummed for myself because I picked him to go to the final 4. So we're on the outside right now. But he said something. I don't remember the headline or the quote, but he said something. I should have the note here. I'm sorry, but he said something with the car. They did something to the rear end, or there's something with the car that was different from past times they had been to Kansas, or something like that that he wasn't used to. I can go back and dig while you talk here at some point, but something with the car was different for him this week that he wasn't used to, and it totally threw him off. And that's a bummer. I mean, you hate to have that happen in the playoffs, especially in a position like this. And now you put yourself out of it a little bit. But yeah, just shocking, really, for me. I thought they were, if anybody was a slam dunk to go to the Final Four, it's them, which they still could be, but didn't think that, like you said, Kansas of all places would be something to cause a problem.
Right. Well, and now we look ahead to Talladega coming up, and this is a track that they did win at in the spring, and they've had some success on the super speedways. It hasn't been all bad there, but yeah, I mean, just a weird day for them at Kansas. I was blown away by the results. Didn't see that coming in the slightest bit. But I mean, I feel like all the guys that were accustomed to having a good day at Kansas, especially. You've got of course, Tyler Reddick. You've got Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin. Like, I feel like the guys kind of just weren't all there. The guys who are normally boom pow at Kansas. So it was just a weird day for them. And I think I know what you're talking about, where he was talking about the
Yeah,
weird. Did you
I
find it?
found it. Yeah, I
Okay,
found it.
go ahead.
It's well, we'll hit on it more a little bit later too, but it's that the shark fin that they had already added after LaJoie's flip at Michigan changed the way the car drove a little bit. So that was what he wasn't sure if that's why he was struggling or not. But I mean, if he's even mentioning it, it's gotta have played a little bit of an impact
Yeah,
on things if he
some
was
kind of a
uncomfortable.
right, some kind of a role. But yeah, just a weird day there for the 45. I didn't put this in the rundown here, but we got to talk about it. I totally forgot. We found out yesterday NASCAR Full Speed is coming back to Netflix for season 2. What was your
Good
reaction to
call.
that? I loved season 1. It was great, and I think that we need to keep doing this moving forward. We're continuously talking about getting the new NASCAR fan in. These are the things we need to be doing.
Mhm.
This is a good move. This is where we need to be. This is what we need to be doing to bring in that next generation of NASCAR fans. Not having races on the CW, that's fine. We won't talk about that right now. But this is a good move. I'm really pumped to see season 2, especially if it's anything close to as good as season 1 was, which I'm sure it will be. But Drive to Survive from F1 kind of started all this, then Full Swing got going with golf, and now we got Full Speed with NASCAR. So, what's your reaction to season 2 coming out?
I'm almost shocked. I mean, I love season 1, first of all, and you're exactly right that this is what's going to move the needle for a lot of new fans. I even remember last winter and during the off season, just having friends and family that definitely don't watch the sport text me about it, saying that they watched the show and they loved it and they loved so and so's their favorite driver now, or they're definitely going to have to try tuning into a few races. So uh, just a firsthand sample size NASCAR, it's working. Like keep doing it. And I'm just shocked that they would announce season 2 now, because I feel like we heard about season 1 well before the playoffs last year. So wasn't expecting to hear anything about it at all at this point. But yeah, pumped to have it back. I'm excited to see it again. I'd do it every year for as long as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. And to your point, you were mentioning people, friends and family texting you about watching it. They've got a favorite driver. That is what this is all about. We got to put a
Correct.
personality with a face and with a car. We got to put a personality with that. That is what is going to propel this forward. And this show is going to do that. And I think they did a great job of it season 1. going into Denny, who he is, he's this guy who, is a spokesperson for NASCAR. He's got an attitude. He, has had some tussles with other drivers. A lot of people don't like him. His fans absolutely love him. And then you got Ross, and they broke down, oh, he's this Florida guy, a watermelon farmer. So really just kind of putting a personality with these guys. It's everything. It's huge. And there were even guys we didn't get to hear from or see last year. Cough, cough. Chase Elliott, who I can't wait to see on the show this year. That's going to be awesome.
Seriously.
Yeah. But yeah, total ad lib right there. Had to throw that in. I cannot believe I didn't include that in the rundown. My apologies, but we covered it. That's good. So
look at us.
Exactly. Good stuff. So now we move on to some news of a driver who will be signing with Colleague. Last week we talked about Ty Norris going to Colleague from Trackhouse. Well, now a Dillon will be headed to Colleague next year. And it's not Austin Dillon. It's his brother Ty Dillon will be essentially kicking Daniel Hemrick out of his spot to take the 10 car. So do you think this will be a successful team? Do you think anything will come of this? We've already kind of seen some of Ty in the Cup Series, and there wasn't any success. I mean, really, at least Austin's been able to string together some wins, but Ty just hasn't really been able to do that. Nothing against him, he's still in the upper echelon of drivers in the world. You've competed at the NASCAR level, but do you think this team will find any success?
No, I don't think it changes anything with the car. I mean, other than the fact they're changing it from the number 31 to the 10. That's no disrespect to Daniel Hemrick either. I think he's a cool guy. But Ty was actually a part of a NASCAR show many years ago that they did kind of like the full speed thing. I don't even remember what it was called or what it was on. I remember it was him and Corey LaJoie and I had somebody else. But anyway, got to know Ty through that show, or anyway, see his life a little bit. Seems like a really nice guy. But you're taking a guy that was running what I think last I saw before Kansas when he got kicked out of his seat, like 17th in points, something like that. And some kid jumped in the truck this weekend and finished. Let's pull it up and get you a number here. Finished 5th with the truck. So if that doesn't really tell you much, I'm not quite sure what's going to. The other thing too, Colleague does have extreme ties to RCR. So Richard Childress being Ty's grandfather, you can fill in the cracks how you want.
Nepotism.
I don't think it's a major improvement for Colleague by any stretch of the imagination. I think it gets them some stable funding, which is important. Ty brings probably some sponsors with them and keeps the car on the track. But yeah, I wouldn't expect the 10 to be a factor in any way next year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they got any better or any worse. No disrespect to either Daniel Hemrick or Ty. It's just kind of it's a lateral move. It's a very lateral
100%.
move going from one driver who runs in the 30s to another driver who's going to run right there in the 30s. And who knows, maybe we're wrong. Maybe Ty Norris comes in and gets this Colleague team onto the right track. But I just don't see that happening. It's going to be tough. It's going to take a lot of work. They're going to have
sponsors to keep the car on the track. That's a good start. But
yep.
What they do with it other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting for sure. And one of the most interesting things in our sport is Talladega. Extremely interesting. I love it. It's the best. Any kind of super speedway racing, sign me up for it. But we've got Talladega coming up this weekend. It's a round of 12 race. A lot of stuff on the line for 12 drivers, but also others. Everybody wants to go and get their win here at the end of the year. So kind of looking ahead at a preview here, today NASCAR announced that they are making some changes to the aerodynamics of the car. Do you kind of want to talk about what those are and how you think those will impact the car?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all, again, I think, like we mentioned, that fin earlier from LaJoie's flip, it's just more attempts to try and keep the thing on the ground because Josh Berry went and showed us at Daytona that they can still fly. So they're extending that roof rail that they had already. They're adding a second one, I believe, back there, so it'll look almost symmetrical in a way. They're adding a little bit more protection to the roof flap something you wouldn't see unless they're spinning backwards, something like that. For those of you that are going to pay attention on Sunday when they're on TV, and then a little side skirt, they're adding a little bit more to the right side just to try and deflect some air if the car again is sideways or backwards. But I don't know. I appreciate NASCAR trying to fix it and making things safer for the guys out there, but I think maybe it was even Denny that said it or somebody else, but I've seen it on Twitter from other people. You're sealing off the bottom of this car completely with material, like it is airtight on the bottom, therefore making basically a airplane wing on the ground that goes when it goes backwards. So good luck to stopping it from flipping. I am a little, again, skeptical with what the changes they're making, but it's safety. So, I mean, you got to try something, right? It's really, at the end of the day, what's important here.
Yeah, I mean, anything to keep the cars on the ground, and that's kind of what, after the big wreck there at Daytona a couple weeks ago, Joey Logano was talking about. We're trying to get these cars on the ground, and they're still lifting. So I think that's really something NASCAR is trying to hammer down here. But it's going to be interesting to see, like you mentioned, the bottom of the car and how that plays into it, because, I mean, it's already a smooth bottom. So essentially,
Yeah.
you do have an airplane wing that's on the ground. So with the extra downforce to keep the car on the ground, if it were to go sideways, now the worry is going to be if it gets backwards, this thing could just take off. And that is not the direction they're wanting to head in. But like you mentioned, it's something they got to try. They got to keep working toward this and making safety measures and stuff. And credit to NASCAR, there have been so many different safety measures that they've added, improved on
Right.
in the last 2 decades that have really just made this a safe sport to be a part of. And it's
Yeah.
crazy to think that you can get in a car and go 200 mile an hour and have an accident and be safe. And it's great. I really appreciate the measures NASCAR's done to keep our drivers safe. But it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. Hopefully, this is the answer and this is the direction we go. But if we do get a car backwards this weekend, we could find other problems with it.
I think you're spot on with that. Again, it's just going to be another one of those things where these things are going 200 miles an hour and you get turned backwards. What else can they possibly do at this point? Like, I don't, besides deploying like a parachute or something to slow the thing down. And you're never going to do that. But
Can you
where do you really?
imagine? Can you imagine a
There's
big wreck happens and just
parachutes just
parachutes
everywhere.
doo, 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 doo,
Yeah,
doo, all throughout the pack? Guys in the back like literally just cannot see at all. There's just
might as well just put a
parachutes.
paraglider on and see how far you can get one of them to take off. Just do the exact opposite. But yeah, I don't know. That it just ties into the next gen, and I could go on my rant again, but it's sealed off on the bottom. Like
Oh, you
until
love
you
that
fix
next gen
that,
car. You
I'm a
love
huge
that
fan.
next gen car.
Huge fan. Super psyched for Sunday too.
Oh, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be interesting. I can't wait. At least think about it this way. At least it's not a short track. At least it's not a race that's gonna be zero passing, zero tire fall off, and from point A to point B. Like
Thank God they're the best drivers in the world, so they can do something with it. But
exactly,
geez,
exactly. Man. So there we go, Klon. Huge fan of the next gen car.
massive.
But moving on here, who are some drivers you're looking at here as we head to Talladega to go out and win this weekend?
I know it's an easy pick because we just talked about him having a good last weekend at Kansas, and he won this race last year. But I truly do think Ryan Blaney, with whatever you want to call this form of super speedway racing with the next gen, I do think Ryan Blaney's arguably the best at it. It's so different from what it used to be. So all the notes and things you have about drivers from 5-10 years ago, you throw it all away. But I do think Ryan's really good at Talladega and Daytona. He seems to find his way to the front. Even Atlanta, like the Penske cars are fast. I
A
think Fords in
damaged
general.
car.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
damaged
Right.
car in Atlanta, too. Drove it right back to
Yeah.
the front. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No. Good to throw that in there. I just think he's somebody to watch every time you go to a place like this. So he's my favorite towards this weekend, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I mean, really, any of the Penske guys, those Penske cars are just They're just fast. It's that simple. They're just fast at these super speedways. And the best of the three Penske drivers is Ryan Blaney. Like you mentioned, he's been great at the super speedways and really better than anybody else in the entire grid has found a way to figure out this next gen car at the super speedway and is really just controlled a lot of races, qualified really well every time. Do you think Michael McDowell gets the pole this weekend?
It'd be interesting. You almost have to pick them, right? I mean, just what that team has done all year, just the unreal speed they find at these places. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe everybody caught up by now, but it wouldn't. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't pick them. I mean, it feels obvious, but yeah, it just a crazy little phenomenon they've had all year. But see if they can keep it going one more time.
Man, they can figure it out in practice, and they got it down in qualifying. But the second that green flag drops, it just goes haywire, like out the window. Yeah, I don't know. I think, I mean, yeah, like you mentioned, it would be crazy not to pick him to win the pole this weekend. But as for some drivers I'm looking at, I think obviously, like you mentioned, Ryan Blaney, you can't not mention him when you're talking about any kind of a super speedway race, whether if it's at Daytona, whether if it's at Talladega, whether if it's at Atlanta, it doesn't matter. Either way, Ryan Blaney's going to be up there. He's going to be in the mix. And I think another driver here that I'm looking at is the 24. They came alive last week. They won the Daytona 500 this year. They were up front and solid the whole day there at Daytona. So
fast in this race a year ago too.
Yeah,
important to note.
So I think that's another driver I'm looking at, as well as another Hendrick driver, Alex Bowman. I mean, there was the whole debacle at Daytona earlier this year where, oh, did he win? Did he not win? You know, which was Fox's fault. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
That's
that he won the Daytona 500 for like 10 seconds.
Yeah, and it's so bad because it was clear and obvious that he didn't, but the replay that Fox played showed him winning, and it's just like, so all these people are outraged. Oh, why isn't Alex Bowman up there winning? And then the next day we all get on Twitter and it's like, oh,
wait a minute.
Wait, hold on. Okay, never mind. It was clear and obviously William Byron. So that's going to be placed at that blame is going to be placed at the feet of the people calling that race. But anyways, so yeah, I think that this is going to be a good weekend for the 24, for the 48, and for the 12. Those are kind of three drivers I'm looking at. But as for strategy, there's a million different things you could do at super speedways. Obviously, we're going to see all the manufacturers working together like they do at these super speedways. What do you think is the winning strategy this weekend?
I think with this car, what it's kind of become is you not only want to control the front of the field like we've seen in the past. You know, there was the 2018 race from years ago where you put all four Stewart-Haas cars at the front and just said, good luck passing us on the bottom all day. And they just kind of kept a stranglehold on the race. I think with the next gen, what it's become is you want to control both the bottom and the middle. So you'll see a lot of times like two teammates sitting on the front of each line and not trying to get in front of the other and just controlling the race that way, which we're used to seeing. I do genuinely think this race is won from just controlling at the front. And I know that's not rocket science, but with this car, I just think that's the only way to really keep your spot, if that makes sense. You can't just drive to the front like you used to at Daytona and Talladega by making moves. Like there's not as much freedom in one driver's hands anymore like there used to be, which is a bummer in my opinion. But
yeah, and there's not a way to split off and make a third line too. I think that's really a big problem with this.
No, right.
Pretty much the way to go at it now is pick the longest line. That's the one that's going to be moving the fastest and stick back with that one. But you know, and that kind of speaks to the next gen car as well. Your favorite car is you can't really get out of line. You can't really get out of line and start that third line because unless if you go and then the next 8-9 cars behind you go with you at the exact time, if you get out of line, you're going to the back, pal. You're going back to 39th, 40th, and that's not where you want to be.
And honestly, like as we get further into the show and our listeners kind of follow along, super speedway racing is is still, I guess, technically, but my jam. Like, I watch old races all the time. It's always Daytona, Talladega, early 2000s, even into the 20 teens.
How's the best?
Just studying it all the time. Like, just love the chess match that it can be in the pack. And this car has taken so much of that from me. And I've always kind of, since the next gen, like, tried to figure out, like, can you do it with two guys? No, you definitely can't. Like,
Did you
need three or four.
Did you like the tandem drafting?
Nope, you could throw that one away too. Though that was brutal. I don't need to. You might as well just do like the old red green show back in the day. If people don't know what that is, go to Google, where they cut two cars in half and duct taped them together and the whole thing. So you could just do that next time if you want. That's fine. But no, that tandem stuff sucked too. But
it was bad. It was really bad.
Just ridiculous. I could go on about that too. But yeah, to the point, like with the next gen, just sucks that you legit do need like 3+, maybe 4 guys to jump out of a line and all be, in unison, basically, like synchronized swimming at this point. Pull out a line just perfectly, stay attached, and try to pass somebody. That's tough. Like, that's really tough to do. Basically impossible, really. But yeah, it's you got to get up front. You just pick the right elevator that goes to the top and try to stay there.
Yeah, and to your point there, you were mentioning all the cars going at once, like synchronized swimming and staying connected. If 8 cars go and 4 stay connected and 4 stay connected, that doesn't work. They'll all fall back. Mm-hmm. So it literally has to be perfect. You have to have 8 to 10 cars hop out at the exact same time, all stay connected and bring that thing to the front. And it's tough to do, especially with this car. So strategy this weekend, it sounds so obvious to say, but the big strategy this weekend for me is just get to the front and don't do anything stupid to not be there anymore. Get up there and stay there, and you'll have a shot. I mean, especially at Talladega, we see so many wild finishes as they come out of the arc right there in the front stretch, to where everybody sees that checkered flag out there in the distance and it's a straightaway, and now it's a free-for-all. Everybody just mixes and matches. And so as long as you're up there in the mix, we saw it in the spring race. Tyler Reddick was not supposed to win that race.
No.
I mean, Michael McDowell technically was supposed to win that race, but then throws one of the most bonehead blocks that I've ever seen in my entire life on Brad Keselowski and wrecks the whole pack. And Tyler Reddick just happens to be right there, slows down for a second, gets right back in the gas, drives around, and he's the winner. So as long as you're up there toward the front and you're in the mix, you're going to have a shot. You're going to have a shot at Talladega. So now we will move on to some of our picks. So who is your pick for the winner this weekend at Talladega? Tough. So tough to go with a pick at a super speedway, but sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're exactly right. I'll just double down on it. I think it's Ryan Blaney again. I just think he's smart. I think in terms of being aggressive, which it's pretty tough to do now with this car, he's probably one of the best at being aggressive and knowing when and how to do it. So I just think he's got a little momentum. Won this race last year. We talked about the playoffs. Everything just kind of lines up for him and Penske. It just feels right now for him to kind of reemerge.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. For sake of parity and not going with the same driver, even though I do agree with you, that's most likely my pick. But to go with somebody else, I will go with that 24 car. I mentioned it earlier. I think that they are right at the cusp of hitting their second groove for the year. And this could be a team that could go out there and win the whole thing. They're a dangerous team who's been
absolutely
seriously quiet this whole time. Not a peep out of them. And here we are when it matters. They got their 3+ wins, whatever it was at the beginning of the season. Quiet the whole rest. Now when it matters, they're loud again. So I am excited to see what this 24 team is able to do. I think they're a team that not a lot of people are really looking at as much, but they're going to be dangerous as this one comes down. So I will take the 24 team this weekend. Any changes to your championship 4 after this last week?
No, I gotta ride with it. We'll go to the end of the year with the 4, I think. Well, we'll see how Todd Reddick does after this weekend. Maybe I'll have some second thoughts. But no, I think we're good. I do think, to your point there about William Byron, it just feels like if they are a team that gets to that Final Four, it's gonna be hard to pick against them. Just kind of the effort they had last year too. So wouldn't be surprised either way.
Yeah, they're a great team. I think I'm gonna stick with my four guys.
Almost have to, right? Like
Yeah,
it's too
yeah.
early to know.
Unless if there's any changes, So, um, I guess we'll revisit that whenever the round of 8 comes back around to see if any of the guys get eliminated, or we'll just kind of see who's left at that point to judge off that. But we can talk about our next 4 out, which will come in 2 races. We got Talladega and then the Roval next week. So who are your next 4 drivers out?
I know there's such a wild card here, and if you told me that Suarez, Briscoe, Cindric, Bowman, any of those names that you're not accustomed to necessarily hearing about winning often, if they would somehow win this race, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Uh, I my 4 out, we'll take Suarez, Briscoe, Cindric, and then I don't know, pick a wild card in there. I'll go with Joey Logano. I just think if he doesn't win it here,
That was
4 points above the cut.
exactly my 4. That was exactly what I was going to take because I feel like it's so easy to sit here and say that it's Bowman, that it's Cindric, that it's Briscoe, and that it's who am I forgetting?
Bowman, or excuse me, Suarez.
And Suarez. Yes, sorry. I feel like it's so easy to sit here and just say those 4 drivers, but with the chaos, with the parity and everything, especially racing at Talladega, one of the premier guys, one of your top name guys is going to get caught up in a wreck this week and have a bad race next week and they'll get tossed. And I think Joey Logano is a big suspect for that. As much as I hate to say it, I think Chase Elliott is a suspect for that. And
Absolutely, yes.
at the
That's
moment,
not a good point.
if let's say the 45 goes out this weekend and wrecks early in the race, which is always a possibility at Talladega, we could lose the 45 in this round, which is
Yeah.
crazy to say. It's not something that I think will happen, but it's certainly in the conversation. So I think it would be wrong to just say those 4 guys and stick with that because there's going to be parity. One of them is going to have a good round here and advance through. So
Yeah.
this one, I wasn't going to go with you on the winner, but I will go with you on this one. I think Joey's that car unless he wins this weekend, obviously. But if he doesn't win this weekend, then I think we could be talking chop block. And the last 2 super speedway races, I feel like of the last 5 or 6 super speedway races, Joey Logano was wrecked in almost all of them.
Oh, yeah.
He's
Yeah,
been caught up in it.
it's him and Chase, to your point, like both of them. I guess Chase won Talladega, the first year of the next gen or something like that. But yeah, just have that trait that just kind of follows them around when you come to places like this. But be interesting.
Abs-
Maybe they cleaned it up.
yeah, absolutely. And that's pretty much everything I think here, but I did want to visit something before we hopped off. Our guy Justin Mondyke had
There you
a
go.
really solid weekend in the truck series this week, finishing inside the top 30. He did get cleared from NASCAR to go and race at Talladega. Unfortunately, he couldn't work it out with the team, so he's not going to be racing at Talladega. But there are some opportunities later in the year where he could get back out there. And I talked with Justin, and if those opportunities do come up, he said he's going to come on the show and talk with us about them. So a lot of excitement with that whole
Heck yeah.
situation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Was pumped to follow along with him on Friday night. That was cool to kind of have a little bit more of a stake in a truck race for a change. That was cool. So, yeah, he did a heck of a job, I thought, and awesome to hear he's getting cleared, and hopefully things start coming together for him the rest of the year. I just, yeah, really excited to see what comes for him.
Yeah, I still cannot even fathom taking a turn at what he was saying 106
I know, for the
186
first
mile an hour.
time. For the first time, like you're jumping in there for practice and a little bit of qualifying, and off you go. You don't really get a lot of time to practice that. And I mean, that's why they're talented. That's why Justin's in the position he is. He's good at it. So, yeah, I just can't even imagine what that would feel like.
Got to be crazy. But anyways, that is episode 3 of the Speeding in the Pits podcast here with myself, Wyatt Williams, and Connor Klon Huberty, the next gen lover. What's your favorite car of all time?
It's sweet. It's
That
a really
and the
cool
car,
one.
that and the tandem drafting car of tomorrow.
Yeah, that was another phenomenal one. Put that right in the museum next to it.
Loved those. Loved those. But yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Next week we'll of course break down this previous race at Talladega. I'm sure there'll be a ton of drama and chaos to talk about with that. Start looking ahead at the end of the round of 12 with Charlotte Roval. It's crazy to think, man, we are currently what? We got this week, next week, 3 more championship.
6
We got
races.
six races left.
That's it.
Oh no.
Yeah,
The
it's
season
October.
went by
It's
so
crazy.
fast.
It did.
Man, it's so nice though being a NASCAR fan. We have such a short off season.
I was just gonna say it's only
Spoiled.
138 days till Daytona.
Oh,
I don't know for
spoiled.
sure. It can't be more than that.
Where we're both football guys, so it's like, man, whenever the Super Bowl happens, it's like, yes, this is the spectacle.
We're
This
back.
is the event. This is awesome. But
We're
then
back.
after the Super Bowl's over, there's no football for 6 months. And then
Yeah.
we hit September and it's like, we're back.
It's a long wait. It really puts things in perspective for a NASCAR fan. You don't truly understand what an off season is at that point.
Absolutely. And this offseason, we'll get season 2 of Full Speed going, so that'll be nice. But yeah, no, great episode 3. Join us next week. We'll break down this upcoming race. At that point, it'll be the previous race at Talladega. We'll preview Charlotte Roval as well. A lot of fun stuff as we get further into these playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate everybody too that's been tuning in and following along with us here these first couple weeks. Always nice to know there is somebody out there listening. So thanks to everybody.
Absolutely. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. Be sure to give us a like, subscribe, follow, everything like that on social media. We appreciate all you guys for taking time to listen to us talk about left turns. And yeah,
That's
great
right.
episode here. Appreciate you for listening. We'll see you next time on the Speeding in the Pits podcast.